Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining, whoever's watching right now. I hope I managed this time with the introduction. So if you're in the chat, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. It's really great to have you. This time, this is my second stream, and this time I have a special guest here with me. Rishabh, do you want to introduce yourself? I think if people are on my channel, then they might know my name, but if you want to give an overview of who you are and what you're doing and why I asked you to be on the stream with me.
For sure. Yeah. So, hey guys, I'm Rishabh, and I've been posting a lot about my cloud journey and journey in the DevOps world for about almost 2 years now.
2 years. I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
yeah.
Wow, that's a
I
long
started
time.
using Twitter
Yeah.
actively in the recent last year, but yeah, I've been blogging and doing other kind of stuff for almost 2 years. And yeah, I met Anais through 100 Days of Cloud and then 100 Days of Kubernetes. Um, and yeah, so I'm working my way towards learning Kubernetes, and that's how we know each other.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're watching, you might be familiar with 100 Days of Code or 100 Days of Cloud, and the idea is basically that throughout 100 days, you aim to learn something on you aim to learn as much as possible on a specific topic, and that could be studying about the topic like 10 minutes a day, or however much time you do have to spend on it. And then you basically share it in public so other people see what you're working on and see also your progress and what you've been learning about. And I've started doing like a long time ago 100 days of code, and then I stopped like at day 30 or 35 or something like that. And when I joined the DevOps space 10 months ago, I had no idea what I was doing. And Rishabh was one of the first people, you were one of the first people I came across. So I saw Rishabh doing basically 100 days of cloud. And I was like, well, if that's a thing on 100 days of cloud, I can probably do it on Kubernetes as well. So he's basically, you're the reason of why I started 100 days of Kubernetes. Yeah, you deserve all of the credit, basically.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought yesterday. So, story to this live streamers. Yesterday, I published a video detailing 10 tips on things that I wish I would have known when I got started.
Mhm.
And these are not tips of like the kind of tools that you should learn. These are not tips of the kind of things that you should be doing, but just generally, I think how to keep your, like what you should be keeping your eyes out, what kind of practices I would recommend people to do in terms of acquiring skills and so on. And within that, I mentioned that I think it's really important to learn to practice using tools and to learn how to use tools. And that's something I would love to talk more about, because in the space, there are lots and lots of different ways to get accredited in some way, let's say accredited, or for your skills, basically, of certificates or boot camps or similar, where you can show you have acquired certain skills. Yeah. So maybe you can tell a bit more about your story, Rishabh, and like the kind of like how you have been acquiring new skills and gotten
Sure.
involved and started with new skills, and how you how you go about it and how you think about that.
Yeah, I think the reason, like you said, it gives you that credibility that the skills you have, you have a proof. If you have certain certifications, I don't feel like it's true for all, especially if you're starting new in your career, and you're looking for your first job. I think that's it helps you with your it makes your resume strong and make sure that you're credible. And it gives you that credibility. But for me, I started with AWS cloud practitioner as my first cert
Mm-hmm.
back in 2019, and at that time I didn't know what cloud computing was. So, in order to be more disciplined and be more focused towards one particular cloud, um, and someone from my company, my mentors at the company, suggested I should go for cloud practitioner because it'll be a nice introduction for you to cloud computing and what public cloud providers are. But then also I would have something in the end, like a certificate to show. And that's how I landed my role of cloud engineer at that company. Is I'm like, okay, I went out of my way to get that certificate and also like have some thing to show, and that I put up some time on the side of my regular day-to-day job to get that certificate. And
Yeah.
I think it makes me more like just accountable that I have to get a certificate. Otherwise I would have like spent, I don't know, 6 months trying to grasp like cloud computing
Yeah.
concepts, but because I had a deadline that I have to get the certificate in like 2 months, I think just makes it more easier.
How did you, okay, let's go back a step. How did you decide you want to go for an AWS certificate versus an Azure certificate? Because I have, especially in my network, lots of people who are going the Azure route.
Mhm.
And for me, this is completely like honest and probably quite embarrassing to say, but I've never properly used AWS. I have
Mhm.
no idea how to navigate the platform. I open it and I start screaming. That's me using AWS pretty much in one treat, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm a bit ashamed of saying that because I have given talks and stuff on using Azure and using Google Cloud Engine and
Mhm.
stuff like that, right? But I have no idea how to use AWS. So how did you decide to go the AWS path in that moment? How did you decide to go for their certificate versus anybody else's certificate?
Sure. At that time, I was not even aware like what public cloud is. Basically, I was only aware with like data centers and stuff, because I was more into like an IT admin role, and then
Yeah.
I went into help desk. For the IT admin, it was an internship, so it was not a full time role. And while I was an intern, I saw my supervisor like going into the AWS console and like playing around and stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what's this? Like, this looks cool, because they were like, he was, I think, in CloudWatch, and he was going through some monitors and stuff. And I'm like, this looks cool, like the graphs and stuff. I'm like, what's this? And he went on and tried to explain me that we are moving away from like traditional data center that we had, which we were managing, and we'll be moving to the cloud. So I'm like, okay, what's like, I know what cloud is because I used iCloud at that time with
Yeah.
iCloud. And he's like, yeah, it's basically the same concept, just that you can rent basically anything in regards to like computer resources. It's just like you rent from Apple. I'm like, okay. So he tried to explain me, I tried to grasp it, but then
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I said, can I shadow someone from the cloud team? He's like, for sure. So I'm super glad like they were so comfortable and like flexible with me shadowing them. And so most of the workloads that my employer had was in AWS, and that is the reason why I chose it. I also did some research before like picking Azure over, or like picking AWS, Azure, or GCP. Is like in my specific area, all jobs were like AWS was a requirement if you wanted to look at a cloud engineer, cloud ops job. And that's why I made the decision to go with AWS. The other factor I had was while I was an intern, someone in the cloud team had to cancel they were going on an AWS summit, and it was a big one here in Toronto, and they couldn't like get refund for like hotels and tickets and stuff. So they said, why don't we take you because the other team member cannot make it? I'm like, sure. So I went there, and it was like, I was so impressed. Like, I think there were like 5,000 people, and they were all so passionate about
Wow.
AWS.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, I need to learn this. So I came back, started learning it, decided to get cloud practitioner. So that's how I made my decision. And I don't think like it totally depends on the job market and like what you are comfortable with. Like just go into their portal, try like different services if you're quite familiar with cloud providers. And if you're not, just go in and see what is comfortable to you. And also check your like region where you're applying jobs for, like which is the most um, famous cloud provider in your area, right? I think
Yeah.
that's how like I would suggest to make a decision, and that's how I did it.
I think going the path of certificates, it's quite influenced by these various external factors,
Hmm.
right? Of who do you plan to work for? What kind of community you want to be involved
Yep.
with? Do you want to focus on a certain area, right? Or for example, I have little idea of like the wider cloud space because I'm so focused on the Kubernetes cloud native ecosystem that I haven't like yet even had time to look at anything else. And in that case, I'm working towards getting Kubernetes related certifications, right? Which would be then, however, independent of different providers. So I feel like when you start to prepare for different certificates and when you go for certificates, you already have to be in some way influenced because you're going to spend a lot of time on those certificates, right? To acquire the skills and then to get the certificate. That's taking lots of time to practice and then to get the skills and then to get it, right? So with tools, like as a comparison, my perspective is that when you learn new tools, there are a lot of, at least in the cloud native space, a lot of tools that you can then apply on different cloud providers or like different, that will give you transferable skills, let's say. And that's kind of my, that's why I don't have any certificates in this space yet. Yeah. And I feel like that's where my resentment towards certificates is kind of coming from, because it will easily narrow you down in a way and restrict you in where you're getting towards. So it's kind of high risk to take a certificate in a way. Yeah, if you're joining right now, you have to be subscribed to be able to comment in the chat, just FYI. And if you have any questions, please do comment them. There was one question, which is basically, how do you stay motivated? Like I just mentioned, you have to spend, if you get a certificate, you have to spend hours and hours on it, which is a way larger commitment than if you decide you want to learn about GitOps and you're going to check out different tools that enable you to learn about GitOps. Do you have any suggestions on how did you stay motivated for your certificates when you were preparing for them?
For me, it was consistency. In the beginning, I think it was just like pure passion for me, at least.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to get no like harsh feelings towards help desk guys, but like I had spent my fair share of time in help desk, and I wanted to get out and like get a cloud, something related to cloud job. And I was so impressed by the technology itself. And that sheer passion was just, excuse me. Yeah. So yeah, the passion itself like drove me, but after some time it goes away, like it fades away and you're not any more disciplined. Like after I got the job.
Like, is it worth it? Should I really do it?
Yeah. So like after I got the role, I was like, now that I have the role, like I should just focus on like doing my day-to-day job and learn other technologies rather than going out and doing certifications.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think consistency is what has been like a major factor. So last year I decided to do, I think I did 11 certificates.
11?
Yeah. And
wow. Okay.
Yeah. I already like had a plan of like giving myself 45 to 60 minutes daily and taking regular breaks.
Yeah.
And that helped me.
Awesome. Yeah. There's, I can share that later, I think, in the comments. There's somebody within the community, within my Twitter network, he's basically calling it the learning hour. Every day he's going to take an hour aside, and within that hour, he's just studying or like learning on whatever he wants to get better in or learn something about, basically, right? So the thing is with tools, when you get started, like I feel like it's a lot more difficult to understand which tools should you get started in. For example, here's a question: should you use Kubernetes versus Docker Swarm? Which one is better? And this really depends. Like these are kind of details that really depend again on like external factors. Why would you start using one over the other? Which company uses which, right? My personal opinion is you should use Kubernetes because that's where the industry is going towards. That's what most companies are ultimately using, to give my perspective on it. But using tools, you have to rely a lot on your own judgment versus which you might only acquire over time, right? Like I was, for instance, in a lucky position where I was dropped into the space and be like, here, write these and these blog posts. And somebody told me which blog posts I should write about and which tools I should use in those blog posts, right? And that's kind of then what I started learning. Versus if you are not within that position and you just want to start learning tools, you will have to find reference points, right? Like for instance, open source projects in this space. Like if you want to learn about cloud native or Kubernetes, check out the cloud native landscape and the tools that are using Kubernetes to understand which tools you should learn about. Versus with certificates, I feel like you have this predefined learning path, right? Of like, this is the certificate. People who know their stuff have prepared it and have prepared the path. That's kind of how I see it. Is that how it goes? Like you sit down and you know what's within the syllabus and then you start learning it?
Yeah, I think it's more structured, and you don't have that, especially if you have like already booked your exam. You don't have.
So you book it first. You usually book it first, and then you have a defined date, and it's like that's your deadline.
I have tried both methods,
okay.
And I think it doesn't give you more flexibility, like you said, because there's a certain set of questions that will be asked, and there are a certain set of services and concepts that will be covered. So in a way, you have to like be structured and like just focus on that, because you have an exam coming up, and it would not make sense to like fail it because
you lost the money.
It costs money, right?
There's a higher stake involved.
Yeah. And you also have spent so much time preparing for an exam, right? So yeah, I feel like if you're just trying to learn a tool set, like let's say if I was going out and learning Kubernetes, for me, I'm like a total beginner in Kubernetes. So what I would do is not like book the exam or in the end look for the certificate. I would just start learning Kubernetes, and maybe down the road, if it feels like I want to get a certificate just to like show employers that I know Kubernetes, I'll go ahead and like get a certificate. And that's what I did with Cloud Practitioner. Is even though it's like the foundational certificate for AWS, I just didn't book it, and I spent I think almost 3 months just to like learn AWS and then book it. And it was way easier to pass it that way. But it took me 3 months, whereas there are people who like try to give it in 2 weeks or like 3 weeks.
Wow.
So but yeah,
that's a difference. Yeah, it's awesome. So when can I ask you, are you applying right now for jobs, or have you within the past months applied for jobs and used the certificates, or are you showing the certificates when you like? In what situations do you use them, basically? To ask it that way, when are you using them, right?
So,
like I mentioned on your channel in the live stream, we were talking about how I got into tech, and I mentioned nobody asked me within the last 4 years about my degree and whether I have a degree or not and what I'm doing for my degree. So how do you justify? And there's this trend, right? Within the tech space, you don't need a degree. So if you want to convince me, let's assume you want to convince me to get a certificate. Let's play that game, right?
Sure.
What would you say would convince me to get a certificate? Why should I get a cloud certified in any cloud provider if nobody ever asked me about my degree, right? Does it make sense?
Yeah. No, it does.
Okay.
So the first thing could be that your like employer is like an AWS partner or like Microsoft partner. And in those cases, you need a certain number of people in your cloud team to be certified.
Oh, okay.
So in certain cases, that is why it's required by some of the MSPs and like partnered programs or employers to have those certificates. And you could see them like in the job description. And I have came across a few job descriptions where it like clearly said, oh, we need someone who's solutions architect certified in AWS. So in those cases, I think, I put it right on my resume that I'm certified. But in other cases, every now and then I have had interviews where they'll be like, oh, like what you have been doing because there was quarantine last year. Like, how did you spend your spare time?
How do you spend your free time if you don't have any hobbies?
Exactly. So I was like, oh, I did some certificates. Oh, they were like, oh, nice. Could we know what type of certificates did you do? So I would show them like, these are the certificates. So that would work in my favor in some way. But here's the thing too, like for me personally, I just wanted to like be held accountable. And in order to be held accountable, that was the key for me. Like, because I was like, the money was not from my pocket. My employer was paying for my certificates. But still, like, I had an exam, and in order to like study, I would like set aside 60 to 45 minutes every day. And that's how I got into, like, right now I'm not working towards any certificate for the
Yeah.
near future, but right now I have this habit of taking out 30 to 60 minutes every day
Oh,
uh,
that's handy. So you got
to
into it
learn.
because you were pressured to.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to have that, like,
Mhm.
as a habit, a daily habit. And the certificates that I pursued got me here. But I don't think they are necessary. But if you're starting out, just look at one fundamental and like one famous certificate, whatever cloud provider you are in. So if you're in AWS, they have cloud practitioner, and then look for like solutions architect next. So those two should be good. And then
Yeah.
similarly, whatever their equivalent is in Azure, I think it's AZ 900 and then AZ 104, and then similarly in GCP and like Kubernetes, you have CKAD. And so, yeah.
So how expensive are those certificates? Because that's mentioned here as well, right? Like if you have a coupon, that's nice, right? Or if your company is sponsoring, what if you don't work in the space yet and you don't have a company that even has you in which their interest is that you get a certificate, right? Like not everybody is that lucky and or has those resources, right?
Yeah.
So what do you do in that case? Because
I know, yeah, Microsoft did this in 2020 where they were giving out free vouchers if you attend like virtual training. So that was really good. But otherwise, like the fundamental certificate range from like $70 to $100 US. And yeah, if you're talking about like solution, like the associate level certificates, they're around 150. And then if they're pro level, they go around $300, which is a lot of money. And given that, you also need resources to learn from.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so that is a lot of money. And I would completely suggest to ask your employer, because there are always some kind of programs where they'll like pay for it and like or reimburse it because you're trying to develop yourself, and they would love to like invest in your personal development or professional development. But yeah, I don't think like a person should like go out if there's like they're struggling with money and it could be spent somewhere else. They shouldn't go out and get a certificate. Look out for these challenges and skill, like cloud skill challenges, which give you like vouchers and stuff. But yeah, don't go out of your like way and get a
It's
certificate.
easy to spend a lot of money on that, right? Like
It's very
especially
easy.
yeah, especially I mean, and not all of those training courses and boot camps and so on, they don't have their best interest in mind, right?
No.
Like it's not in their interest that you spend a little bit of money and you are done with it, right? It's in their interest that you come back and spend more and more to get more certificates, to get more training for these certificates specifically. Like I understand, like you want to get certified, you pay for the certification. There's a process involved that you're funding with it, right? There's a name that you get the stamp on and so on. Which gives you obviously more credibility in the space and gives you access to different kind of roles. And also, this is like, I guess, a bold statement and it depends on the company, but I guess having the certificate, you can ask for higher salary and other benefits if you have the certificates versus if you don't have them, right? Because you have invested into them. The thing is, so with tools, right? Me just learning, like that's where I'm coming from. I have just been learning tools and acquiring skills through trying a different tools. So what you see on my YouTube channel is basically me getting started with different tools, sometimes for the very first time, and just trying to understand what's going on. And that's there's a little bit besides their documentation, besides the project documentation, it's explaining you what, like, how does it work, right? So there are things that like basic things about Kubernetes that I don't know because I've never like studied the theory properly for something, right? I'm using the tools and I understand maybe how the tools work, but over time, right? The more I use them. So that's I think definitely one thing that we're missing out on, right? That there's nothing that explains you something in detail. And if you don't have somebody who's kind of filling the gaps or something that's filling the gaps, you kind of have those gaps, right?
Yeah.
But then it teaches you several other skills, right? Like for example, I like with tools and those videos, I suggest people to try out open source tools because a lot of like I mean, tell me how it is for you. But at your job, you will have to use tools, and a lot of those tools are paid for by the company and are expensive, and you on your own would never have access to them, right?
Yeah.
But if you use open source tools, you can try out similar processes and get used to them, and then kind of accelerate or get the know-how from there, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the main, like, I think you can, if you get lucky, you can, okay, this is like a bold statement here, and you can completely disagree, right? You can rip me apart for that. But the thing is, I think you can replace certificates with focusing on tools and getting the skills, right? Like contributing to open source, getting started with different tools in the space, getting lucky and starting to work in the space, and getting then industry credibility, let's say.
Yep.
Let's call it industry credibility. But the same way you can't replace, you can replace certificates, but you can't replace tools with certificate, like, wait, no, I lost myself. I don't know what to say. So the thing is, well, you can replace tools with certificates, but you can't replace certificates with tools.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So you're basically...
Can we rephrase it?
So you're basically saying that you can replace certificates by just learning the tools and like contributing to open source.
If you get lucky, right?
Yeah.
But you can't do it the other way around.
So you can't replace tools with just getting certificates. So if you don't know the tool...
That's what I mean. Yeah. So
if you don't know the tool and you can't get a certificate,
Yeah. So, okay. So the thing is, if you just get the certificate, right? At one point you will have to learn the tools, right?
Yeah.
But you can't do it you can't do it the other way around. What just happened? Did I do something? Here we go. So I think you can't do it the other way around. Like I can't just get the certificate and be done with it, right? Without spending time on the tools themselves, right?
And I think
that's where I want to get to.
Yeah, and I think that's why I suggest like just getting the certificate itself won't get you a job. Even if you pass, like they call you for an interview, like they'll know because they will have some specific questions for a specific tool set that you might not be able to answer just because you have a certificate and you didn't go ahead and like dive deep into the tool.
Yeah.
And that's why like I saw a comment by Arijit. I think he said like certificate requirement in text is not a requirement in tech space. He said being a 15-year-old into ML, IoT, Docker kids, and even speaking at DockerCon didn't require a certificate. And I totally agree. Like,
you're lucky though.
But
no, in some way. I mean, you probably did a lot for that luck, but it's not the norm.
Yeah,
let's say, right?
Yeah, and also like, especially if you look out for jobs from like the FANG. So like Facebook and like Amazon.
Do you ask for it?
No, they don't. So if
they don't?
No. So if you go to their job requirement,
thing, no? Don't you think they provide the certificate, but they don't ask for it? Yeah,
we had a detailed like conversation about this in our like podcast with me, Gwen, and Antonio.
I should watch that.
Yeah, and this was a great point because if you look for AWS jobs from Amazon, and if you look at Microsoft jobs that are related to their Azure platform, and same thing with Google, they don't mention anywhere that you need to have like AWS solutions architect certificate in order to apply for the job.
Yeah.
And I have seen many people who got solutions architect role at AWS didn't have any certificate at all. They went
what do you think about that?
I think that makes sense, right? Like,
why does it make sense to you?
That you need to have like projects and you need to know the tool set itself. Yeah. And certificates aren't a requirement. They're just for you to make yourself like accountable or credible. Yeah. It gives you a sense of like, okay, I achieved something, right? Whereas like, even if you know AWS in and out, go ahead and apply for a job at AWS and you'll get it. I'm like, sure, if you're like technically capable. Sure. Go ahead.
Me, which is said I have no idea what AWS. Let's see.
But I think they aren't a requirement is what I want to say. And like you said, if you know the tools, you should
Yeah.
be able to like secure a job, given that you have like some kind of full stack projects hosted in that cloud provider, and like you have all of those projects publicly available on GitHub where they can go ahead and look into it. That'll just define like how technically capable you are,
Yeah.
instead of having a certificate and you not being doing any projects and you don't know how to deploy a VM in AWS. Let's say, yeah, no, I think it isn't a requirement, and yeah, you can't replace certificates with knowing tools.
So how do you decide between different certificates? Like, how do you decide if they are similar? Like, there was one example here. True. Recently, Google Cloud released Digital Leader Certification, and I don't see much difference between that and associate. Now, I don't know the difference between them. I would go ahead and Google what they are, both of those certificates, and then compare the syllabus.
Yeah.
But like for me, I'm completely inexperienced with those certificates, right? How do I decide which one I'm supposed to get now, right? Like, I would be completely lost at this point of like, where should I spend the next 3 months of my life? Right?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
What would you do in my position? Assuming I don't have anybody to ask. Let's assume I'm completely new in this space. I have nobody to ask. I have been using some open source tools. This is my use case. Yeah, I have been using some open source tools. I want to get a job in the next 6 months in DevOps anything, and I want to get certified for the skills that I have been learning about in the past months. So what do I do next, right?
Yeah.
In this case, I know the tools, but I can't show that I know them in this case, right?
Yeah, I would say like let's assume you're applying for jobs that require, let's say, AWS in our case. I would say go ahead, like do some introductory level courses, or there are a lot on YouTube. Just get yourself familiar with the console or the web UI of AWS, and then start looking at their fundamentals, or like the first level of certification they have, whatever they might be in your cloud provider, but for AWS it's cloud practitioner. And I would say like just go through the material and see like where you stand after you have done some introductory kind of course, or you have gone through the console yourself, and then start learning things that you are not like confident about and you don't know, like doesn't make sense to you. Like I think there are like 165 services in AWS, or even more than that.
165.
It's more than that. I don't know. Don't quote
really
me on that.
Know, no? I'm joking. I'm joking.
But
yeah.
See what would be covered in the exam, and I would say going through that fundamental route, and then I think after that, what I do is I decide if I want to go to like the associate level. I would never go to like the pro level certificates in the beginning if I'm job hunting.
Why? It doesn't look good, does it?
It requires a lot of hands-on experience. And what I would suggest is like after you have secured a job, and if you really want the pro level certificate, then go for it, because you'll be working in and out in that environment, right? So you'll be working with AWS every day. That would help you like gain that experience and know your services in and out for the pro level exam, because most of the questions in pro level exams are scenario based, and you'll only know those.
You can't know if you haven't worked.
Exactly, right?
That's a good point. That's something really good to know. How do you learn about it? Like, how did you learn this information?
Is
it something people know? I didn't know it. No. How did you know it?
How did I know it? Like the questions that would be asked?
Yeah, how do you know that you shouldn't go for the pro level exams? What you just told us.
This is somebody told me. So
okay, how did they know? Did they just tell each other? Okay, so we are telling everybody here listening now, don't go for the pro exams.
Yeah, exactly. So Antonio said certifications are always validation, not resume builders.
Yeah, okay. I like that. Yeah, I like that, definitely. So what do you put on your resume if it's not the certification? You put the
projects. Put projects. Yeah.
That you do while getting the certification.
Exactly.
Okay.
So
I'm learning a lot here. I'm not trying to ask them questions, okay? This is generally me trying to understand how the process of getting a certificate works.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
So yeah,
yeah.
no, practical experience and getting hands-on is like really important, and make sure you make it part while you're getting a certificate, because that'll play out more and like really
Yeah.
help when you're interviewing, because there'll be questions that you might stumble upon in your interview that you only know once you have like opened up the console itself and you have tried different services, you have tried deploying your projects to that cloud provider. And yeah, projects and previous experiences, I would say. Yep, I totally agree. And so like a general resume is kind of like your past experience goes on the top, and then comes your education,
Yeah.
and then like have your projects, and then if you have some space left in the end,
That's where
then
you put the certificate.
yes, then only
Really?
then you put your certificates. That's what how I do, especially for the jobs
Yeah.
that require certificates. As I said, I've
Yeah.
stumbled upon few job postings where it said, "Oh, you need to be certified." I don't like it. Like I don't like the requirement, but I know that in certain cases, as I said, if you're a AWS partner or you're a Microsoft certified, I don't know what they call it in Azure world, but if you're partnered with them, you need certain number of employers to be certified in order to have that like partner relationship.
Yeah.
So in those cases, I would put my certificates at the bottom just so that they know like I'm eligible at least
Yeah.
for the job application. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, I would say like practical hands-on experience in your projects should be your main priority. And if you're going for certificates in your job hunting, like make sure you make practical and hands-on experience part of it. Like do something basic, like cloud resume challenge is really good challenge. So you basically
Cloud
create,
resume challenge.
yep, I
Cloud
can,
resume challenge. That's how I learn about things. I just Google it. Is it .dev?
yes.
Okay, let me link it. Take the challenge. What does it do? What happens if I do the challenge?
So you basically create a basic website about yourself, which would be like your resume, similar to
Yeah.
your resume, and
Yeah.
you try to host it in. I know this challenge is in AWS, but they recently released an Azure version of it. So it
Okay.
basically becomes a full kind of full stack project, a web project that you host in your given cloud provider, being AWS or Azure. So the AWS one, I think, came in early 2020. It was by Forrest, who works at a Cloud Guru,
Yeah.
which is a like a training provider.
Hmm.
So yeah, so you basically, yeah, build your resume as a website and you host it in AWS,
And
and you need
through
to figure out,
you
yeah,
learning.
yes, you basically learn how basically like AWS works and how their different services can be utilized in your cases to host a web project. So I'll be honest, I the challenge at that time was not public.
How
So
did you
back
get access?
no, so now it's public.
Oh,
What I
that's what
mean
you mean.
is I kind of did it. So how I got my cloud role was, so I did the cloud practitioner
Yeah.
exam, and after that, what I did is I built not a like a resume, but I built like a portfolio site,
Hmm.
and then I hosted it in AWS,
Yeah.
and then I had all the source code in GitHub. I also made like a really cool diagram of like how the site works. So if a user comes in, it goes to like, I don't know, I had a load balancer, and I deployed the site to a basic like Ubuntu VM, and I
Yeah.
have that in a cool diagram. And when I was in my interview for the cloud engineer role, and then
Yeah.
did all the formalities. They had some questions about AWS. I answered them, and they're like, "Oh, what? How do you explain? Like, you have no experience or no past experience being in cloud, being a cloud engineer. Like, how would you explain like your right fit for the
Yeah.
role?" So I
Yeah.
showed them that project, and I also prepared a presentation on like how everything works. Um, and at that time, this was not a thing, the cloud resume challenge.
Yeah.
And in 2020, as soon as like Forrest made this, I was like, I reached out to him. I'm like, I did something similar and it helped me secure a job. He's like, oh, that is awesome. He's like, when did you do it? I'm like, back in 2019. And but this challenge is really good because it utilizes more services than what I did. Like mine was
Yeah.
a basic HTML site that was
See, like
posted.
if you would have put, wait, sorry for interrupting, but if you would have put that public, what you did then, right? In 2017, was it?
Yeah,
Then
19.
more people, 19, sorry. Then more people would have seen it, right?
Exactly.
So that's the
Exactly.
thing. Like if you do something like that, if you're that like creative and you come up with your own challenges and use cases, put it out there, because first of all, people see it, right?
Mhm.
If you apply for a job, but then also others can see it too and use it, right? Even if
No,
it's
for
not
sure.
as advanced as his, like it might have been if you kept working on it or working with other people on it because they saw it, right?
Mhm. And it would
For
be like
example.
more detailed and like, yeah, it would have helped others. But I'm really glad like he did that because it was really thorough on how to utilize different services. And then I made changes to my own. I'm like, I need to learn more. But
That's
yeah,
amazing.
this is a good, like really good example of what kind of projects you should have under your belt if you're applying out for jobs, rather than going out and getting certificates and spending your money there. Like I don't, if it's like live or die situation, don't go for certificates.
Well, live
Go
or
for
die, live.
projects.
Don't go for anything else. That
yeah.
makes sense. Yeah. Also, okay, so changing topic a little bit. I mean, okay, we've just discussed that we're basically on the same page that nothing will replace you getting out and practicing the tools and building those example projects that you can either show publicly or not publicly. But do you think, does it have on your imposter syndrome, does it have, not saying that you should have, no, but does it have an influence? Like I would assume, see, if I learned something right now, there's nothing assuring me that I learned it, right?
Mhm.
Like it's really just me getting out there. And if you have any experience in the like chat, if you're watching this, feel free to come and get involved. Like this is an open conversation. Happy to get input. Thank you, Antonio, for providing so many thoughts. That's great. So see, like I'm right now at this point where I'm like, do I really know what I think I know, right? Now, if I would sit like a Kubernetes exam, I would probably fail. I'm like 90% sure I would fail those exams because I didn't prepare for them, right?
Mhm.
But at the same time, if I would pass it, it would assure me, oh, I know what I think I know about Kubernetes. Versus right now, I don't know what I know versus what I don't know. So do you think it has like an influence on your own confidence in a way?
I think it does. Especially like for me, having sitting so many of them, I think it kept me like
11 in the past year.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
I think it kept me like motivated and
just
it's a good feeling when you pass them, right?
Yeah.
There's no denying in that. Like I felt, okay, I know what I'm talking about, or I know when I talk in the meetings, because like I don't know, I have this, like you said, imposter syndrome, because I don't want to like make my age public, but I'm youngest in our team, right? And
we're probably similar age.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real. If you're young and you're getting started, and then there are people who have like most team members, and I don't want to say my team members are old. If you're watching this, I'm not what I'm saying, but most of them are like they have a decade or so of experience. I can't have that, right? I'm not that old.
Exactly.
So what do you do, right?
In those cases, you have these amazing conversation in like team meetings where you are trying to build a solution. And in those cases, like imposter syndrome hits so hard because you're like, I know like I should speak up and be like, this is the right thing or this is the wrong thing. But in those cases, I'm like, maybe I'm not the right person to say it here, right? Because I could be wrong. But in that certain cases, when I take certifications and I pass, I'm like, okay, I know what I'm talking about. And I can stand up for myself and like speak in meetings and say, oh, no, we should use this service because we can do things certain way and it will give us more like a better solution for what we are looking for.
Yeah, totally. See, that's kind of missing if you focus on, if you don't take certificates, right? Like there's nothing reassuring of us that it's not just my opinion, what I'm saying, versus a lot of times it's my opinion because I've tried this tool versus another tool, right? Let's say, for example, with GitOps, should you use the two main tools, a Flux and Argo CD? Which one should you use? Yeah. Well, I have my opinion, but why should people trust my opinion? And a lot of like in companies, right? That's actually here's a thought. That's where companies like to get consultancies on board to advise them what to do, because the consultancy is paid for knowing what they're supposed to be knowing, right? So you can also kind of put the shift on the, like, if something goes wrong, it's a consultancy, right? Like they did it wrong, they were supposed to know, or they did it right because they were paid and supposed to know, and they have all the certificates and everything, right? Versus nobody's supposed to, like, in a team, usually, like, why should they trust this one person to bring on a certain tool or take a certain decision, versus if they have the proper credentials, whether those are industry experience or open source experience, contribution experience, or certificates, then you can place higher, right? You can automatically ask for more responsibility and credibility within that project, right?
No, for sure. Yeah, I think, as I know we might be spiraling if you need, like, I know this was supposed to be like, where do you start and like why do you get certificates?
Yeah.
But once you get into that realm, it can be like a lot of, like you said, like the
bureaucracy
decisions.
as well.
Yes,
there's
exactly.
like, you can't ignore, like, especially once you start working, there's a certain bureaucracy involved in certificates. But I think the last thing I want to touch upon, like, as a topic to discuss, and like, working in public, and that's what we just talked about with the project, right? That you did of, let's just show by example what those tools are used for. What is a VM? What is a load balancer, and so on. But also working in public and being incentivized to learn those tools and get involved in the community and participate with those open source projects, that can get you further networking experience that you don't necessarily have when you prepare for a certificate, right? Like, when you prepare for certification, you don't necessarily get this community collaboration experience that then can get you further opportunities. So would you say, like, if people are focusing too much on certificates, I would assume they are missing out in some way on this community value, on this added value by the community, no? What are your thoughts on that?
Like, even if you're preparing for certificates, I would highly suggest to like do it in public, because there might be others who are preparing for the same one, right? And that was our all like kind of thought process with 100 Days of Cloud is you can do 100 Days of Cloud learning a tool set or a skill set. But if you're preparing for certificates too, you can do that too. Just post your progress. And like, if you have any questions, ask the community itself what sort of questions you have, because there might be others who are struggling with the same question, but they're like not willing to ask it, right? And I think, learning in public is like, I feel so like it has helped me a lot in the past year. Like 2020 is when I started like tweeting about and like doing it on GitHub and getting involved in several Discord Discord servers and trying to like put out what I'm doing. And even though if I'm doing it wrong, at least there is someone to tell me that I'm doing it wrong. And I would know, okay, thanks for
you might not know.
guiding me, right? Otherwise you won't know. You would keep on doing it.
No, it's a real thing. Exactly. If nobody tells you within the community that, right?
Yeah.
You should maybe not use this tool. It's kind of being deprecated.
Exactly. But no, I think learning in public, either be it certifications or just like putting out content and GitHub projects, I think should be your focus either way. It'll help you. Trust me. It has helped me. It has helped several others. I have connected to too many good people in the tech industry.
Like myself.
Yeah, nice. And otherwise I would have just been sitting and with like one or two tabs open of certificate and outline and just studying for them and pass the certificate and give the certificate to my employer and be like, oh, I passed it, and nobody would know. Exactly. So learning in public is like, I would say, is the number one tip.
Definitely. I think I would totally agree on that. Awesome. This has been really, really great. If there are any questions, any thoughts, anything you would like to share, now is the time to share it in the chat. You have to be subscribed though for at least a minute. Otherwise, they don't allow you to comment. So that's the only requirement. This has been really great. I think especially depending on whom you talk to and their experience, people will always try to push for what they have gotten advantages in, right? Like I got my opportunities through focusing on practicing tools, getting involved within the community. I didn't get any, because I didn't get any certificates, I didn't get any opportunities through getting certificates. So there's no need for me to glorify certificates versus somebody who has spent hours and hours learning about it and solely focused on certificates, right? They have it's in their interest to make it shine, right? It's in their interest to talk of the highest way about them, right?
Yeah. And I think the only reason, like I know someone commented that like the only reason they got it is because their employer was paying for them. And that is kind of like somewhat true in my case too. Like I never had to like pay anything out of my pocket, whether it be like Udemy courses, a cloud guru subscriptions and stuff. And also like test accounts to test like infrastructure and stuff and make sure like you're not being billed for it. And that is a good perk if your employer provides you that. And I went for like so many certificates. Don't do it. I went for it just because I said like Microsoft was having this event where you could get free vouchers. And at that time, being from like for the past 2 years, I've been working with AWS. Right now, I'm in a DevOps role at the same company where we are required to support like few other products. So we are required to know Azure and GCP. Our first focus was Azure. So I was trying to learn Azure for the past year. And I was like, oh, Microsoft is having this event. So like while I'm learning Azure, why shouldn't I like take certificates because they're free, right? So that's why I so like sad those. And yeah, there's I don't know. I just want to say like
Makes
there's
sense.
no need to like go out and get like 11, 12 of these.
Even if you did it, there's no need to do it. I like that you're honest about this, right? I like that you're honestly sharing, see, I've done it, but here's my honest experience doing it, right? Which is, I think, provides a really great perspective. So there's one question, which is, I think, for you. I'm just going to direct it to you. Do you contribute to open source projects?
Yeah, so not like huge projects, but the few I could name is I'm assuming 100 Days of Kubernetes is open source. And then 100 Days of Cloud was open source. So I know that was like I could also like do a live stream of my first contribution to open source. I didn't know what open source was until like 2 years ago.
You should do that.
Yeah, I'll totally do it. And
go into here. How do you start learning in public?
Just tweet day one. I'm doing this.
Look at anything. Subscribe to newsletters. Read maybe blog posts, and then once you read this blog post, tweet what you learned.
Yep.
That's basically the premise. You just share your thoughts and ideas in something, or if you, for example, do a tutorial, just put the code onto your GitHub. And you don't have to publish it anywhere. You can tweet about it or just put it out there. So if people want to see it, they can see it. And then maybe you can reference your finished example in the blog post itself in the comment section or something like that. It's basically this loop, I feel like, of like you use some input, you create another output, and then this output feeds back into somebody else's input of ideas and how to use it and tools. And that's kind of this knowledge cycle.
For the open source stuff, I think that was my first contribution for 100 Days of Cloud. We were trying to build like a platform, or especially like a website for the beginning. And they needed a CI/CD integration using AWS. So I kind of designed it. Like, I know Andrew was like completely impressed, and me being just starting out, I think it was really impressive because I learned a lot in that process of just figuring that out. And then I think recently, Gwen has a taught guide for cloud computing, which is like
you did it together, no? Wasn't it the guide on DevOps, becoming a cloud engineer? No, ignore me.
I don't know.
I didn't say anything.
No.
Okay, no,
I don't know the name. We have like switched the name for. I think we'd switched the name twice. I think it's called Self-Taught Guide for like to getting into cloud engineering. Could be wrong, but yeah, that one I am trying to make my some valuable contributions to it because it's amazing. Go and design it. Like it's a 6-month process where it's well structured on which technology areas you should focus. So that's one of the open source kind of projects that I'm working on. And also Azure Function University is something that Mark on Twitter, if you don't know him, he does some amazing sessions and tutorials on Azure Functions.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to contribute to that with some lessons. But yeah, there is more to come this year, and that's why I'm saying like
Awesome.
I am going away from like just getting certificates and trying to make like more valuable contributions in the community. And I think the best way is just like having videos and tutorials out and blog posts, and then also like having lessons on GitHub that would help beginners to like get into cloud or DevOps world. And that's why I love 100 Days of Kubernetes. And if you're not, subscribe to Anais.
Join the community.
Yeah,
it's a DevOps community, but there's also the channels for 100 Days of Kubernetes. It's all in one friendly, happy family Discord. So yeah, awesome. Well, this was a super nice stream and chat.
For sure.
Thank you so much for providing all those thoughts and ideas. I certainly didn't know most of it. Like not having done certificates on the space, I didn't know a lot of what you shared. So if you just tuned in, you might want to check out the stream afterwards. Well, and thank you everybody for joining. That was really nice. Thank you so much for all the input. And check out Rishabh's YouTube channel. I'm gonna comment that. I'm gonna link it. So check it out as well. There's a really cool video that we just did on his channel as well on how you get started in tech. It's a series, right?
Yep.
We just started. It's a new series.
It's a new series. We just did a new episode yesterday. It's weird how the timing worked out, like with this stream and that episode.
We didn't talk for half a year, and then 2 streams. So
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Well, have a lovely day, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye.